Most men aren't trapped by lack of discipline, they're trapped by what they won't admit. They say they want health, but they want aesthetics. They say they want freedom, but they still want approval. They say they're fine, but they keep explaining themselves. If your goals need justification, you're not free. Freedom isn't what you own, it's what you admit. Welcome back to Iron Suit. I'm your host, Marwan Kilu. Today, I want to talk about freedom, not the kind that you buy, not the kind that you signal on social media or justify to your friends, the kind that you either have or you don't. And most men think they're free because they can afford things. They built something. They got the house, the business, the bank account. But freedom isn't what you drive, it's what you wear. It's not even what you achieved. Freedom is freedom is whether you're lying to yourself about why you want anything in the first place. Got my words mixed up there. And most men are lying, not consciously, not maliciously, but they're lying. They're in conflict with themselves, and that conflict is a prison they don't even know that they're in. So let me explain exactly what I mean. Let me give you a personal story. I used to wear £5,000 custom Hugo Boss suits. Okay, oh, I'm talking about custom, as in you go to Hugo Boss, and it's like the custom suit that you buy with no brand from any kind of bespoke. Okay, but it's Hugo Boss. Okay, and I wore that for my wedding. I went to the Hugo Boss store, and I told them that I want this suit, so they customized the suit according to my body, to my body. Ferragamo shoes, the whole thing, right? The whole designer stuff. I liked how I looked. I liked how I felt in them. And there was something about putting on a well-made suit that made me feel like I was operating at a level that I wanted to be at. And then I went through this phase, a phase where I convinced myself that I didn't need to show off anymore, which was weird because I wasn't like I'm going up to people and saying, you look at my suit, they say Hugo Boss or whatever. Look at my shoes, it's Ferragamo, or look at this. It wasn't that kind of like the topic of conversation, right? But for some reason, I tried to justify it in my mind that I don't need to show off other people, so I don't need to wear it, right? I started to wear non-designer labels, regular stuff, nothing flashy, nothing that would make anyone think I was trying too hard. And I told myself I was fine with it. I told myself that it didn't matter, that I had outgrown needing external validation. But here's a problem: I wasn't happy, I wasn't congruent. To this day, I still buy designer labels. Why? Because I'm free. It makes me happy. Not because what everyone else thinks, because that's who I am. In the period when it didn't, when I didn't buy the designer labels, when the identity wasn't me, I was lying to myself. I was pretending that I was somebody that I wasn't. And I see this everywhere now. I've got friends who do exactly the same thing. They wear designer things in front of certain people, flash the cash, play the part, drive nice car to certain events. Um, and then in front of other people, they act like they're broke and act like they're humble, like they're above all that. And it's environmental, it's reactive, it's completely incongruent. Like this is kind of called environmental exposure, right? Because they're not being themselves. They're adjusting based on who's watching. Let me tell you about cars. It's another personal story. I've always loved German cars. I don't know why, but I fell in love with BMWs. I love BMWs, man. And, as soon as I started driving, that's what I wanted. I wanted a BMW as my first car, but I couldn't afford it. And since my parents were buying me a car, I couldn't really say to my mom and dad at like 17, Mom and Dad, get me a BMW. So I decided to go down to a Renault 5 GT Turbo. Not the standard one. And for you guys in the USA, you probably wouldn't know what it was. You have to be sort of old school in the UK to understand these kind of cars. And people told me to be happy with it. They told me it was a great car. First car, it was a great car. Told me I should be grateful. And don't get me wrong. Okay, I'm grateful that my parents bought me that car. And it was a reasonable car for somebody who was 17 years old, a turbo car with like that kind of it was light as a feather and fast. And it's not bad as a first car, but I wasn't happy. Deep down, I wanted the BMW. Okay. And no matter what anyone else said, that's what I wanted. There is a Kanye. Oh no, it's fine. My line is fine. I'm just checking my noise cancelling on my mic. There's a where was I? There's a Kanye line from The Good Life. I had a passion for flashing before I had it in hand. Hey, that was that song. Still, I came across it, and that's just the lyrics just stick in my head, and that was me. I knew what I wanted before I could afford it, and I just knew, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. At 18, I saved up £12,000 working the whole summer. I worked the whole summer to save up £12,000. That was like 30 years ago. For an 18-year-old kid, that was a heck of a lot of money. And I bought my first BMW, a 318 4-door. I love that car. To me, that was like, I got a car that I wanted. That was the goal, the first goal. And after that, I owned several more BMWs over the years. I had a 328 coupe, 2 doors. I had an M3 convertible that was fast as anything, 2 doors, cabriolet or convertible as it's called, a SUV in the form of an X5. But in between, I tried other things. So I drove a Golf GTI for a while. I drove an A-Class Mercedes. Both good cars. Mercedes was cool, not bad. Both were perfectly fine. But I wasn't happy with them. I kept coming back to the BMWs. The Golf was okay. Mercedes was okay. But I wasn't congruent. I was trying to convince myself that I didn't need what I actually wanted. You know how you keep justifying to yourself, I don't need this, I don't need this, I don't need that, to justify not actually buying something or justify like not affording something in some cases. In my case, it wasn't actually about affording. It was just convincing myself that I didn't need it, so that I wouldn't buy it. Okay. And that's what you do sometimes. You justify having a need, not having a need for not buying something. And so you end up suppressing that appetite. Anyway, that's a whole load of like we can go off on a tangent over here, but that's like another another episode. I think I did this. I think I did an episode on this, and needs versus wants. Anyway, but basically, long story short, is when you keep saying that I don't need something and you're not congruent, which is sort of like part of this one, you end up suppressing something. And you end up sort of unhappy. Anyway, this is like sort of part of this podcast. So I was trying to convince myself I didn't need what I actually wanted, that I should be satisfied with something else. that wanting a BMW specifically was somehow shallow or materialistic, right? But that internal conflict, that dissonance between what I wanted and what I told myself I should want, that's what keeps you trapped, man. That's what keeps you trapped. Here's the thing what most men miss. Your identity shouldn't be tied to what you drive. And that part is true. Your identity shouldn't be tied to what you drive. A car, the car is a tool, right? It's a possession. It's not who you are. But pretending that you don't want something you actually want, that's not freedom either. Like, that's just virtue signaling in reverse. Because think about it. If a guy genuinely doesn't care about cars, if he's completely fine with a van or a pickup truck or whatever gets him from point A to B, that's freedom. Like, if I said that, yeah, I like the Renault 5 GT Turbo, that's my favorite car, or I like the Golf GTI, or I like buying clothes from, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a store in the US, but I can't think. Anything that's not design, and then that's cool. Okay, I'm congruent. But if I want a BMW and I have something else, and I say that I don't need a BMW because, like, why do I need a BMW? Like, that's not congruent inside, right? There's a congruence in not wanting the thing. So, like I said, there's a congruence in not wanting the thing. Like, that person is not trying to prove anything. He's not justifying anything. He just doesn't care. And that's real. Like, I love the BMW. Like, I didn't hide it. People ask me, what's your favorite car? I said BMW. I love BMW. Still to this day. Now there's, like, in the UK, there's like all sorts of cars. But I just like BMWs. I don't drive a BMW now because I don't care that much about cars, and I don't drive that much anymore to justify, having a BMW. So I'm congruent, right? Right now, I'm congruent. Maybe later on in life, I'll be like, okay, I want a Ferrari. Taste change. If a guy loves a Lamborghini, and he genuinely loves it, not because of what people think, but because he actually loves the car and he buys one, then that's also freedom, right? You're congruent with yourself. Both are free. So if you don't like something and you don't care for it, then you're sort of congruent. But a guy in the pickup truck and the guy in the Lamborghini can both be free. But only if there's one thing, and that's congruence. Congruence is the key to your freedom. And most men don't have it. They're so concerned about what they should want, what it means to have a certain goal, what society will think, what their parents will think, what their peer group will think. And whether it's a car or a six-pack or a $50 million business, there's always this layer of consideration about what it means to everyone else. What will people think if I buy this? What will people think if I admit I want this? What does it say about me if I change this? And if you live like that, then you're not free, because that's how society wants us to feel, right? They sort of want you to suppress your appetite because they don't want you to feel selfish for chasing your goals, because they're mirroring their insecurity on you, right? It's selfish to want a BMW or to want a Ferrari or a Lambo because I can't get one. Well, no, it's fucking not. No, you can't get one. You can't get one. Doesn't mean that everyone else doesn't get one. Anyway, I digress. So a person who's not ambitious and a person who's not extremely ambitious can both be free, as long as they're congruent with themselves. And this right here is the thing that will either set you free or keep you in prison for the rest of your life. And I had to learn this. I had to go through it. I went through it. And, there are probably still areas in my life where I'm not fully congruent, where I'm still managing perception or justifying desires. But I know this much. When you stop lying to yourself about what you want, when you're not conflicted about it, you move faster than you ever thought possible. And let me bring this to fitness, because this is where I see it more clearly. Right. So I walked into a gym recently, and I saw a boot camp happening in the, one of the basketball sort of badminton court. They use both. They use it for both. Right. Adults everywhere, sort of battle ropes, burpees, jump ropes, pushing, sleds, push-ups, rotating stations. Everyone's sweating, faces red, breathing hard. I'm not saying that don't do sleds or don't do push-ups or don't sweat. That's not what I mean. Okay, sleds are actually quite useful. Push-ups are okay as well. Right, but it's all like in the context of things. And like I'm watching this and thinking, why? Why are they doing burpees? Why are they supersetting everything? Why are they sweating like they're going to die? What's the actual purpose here? What are you trying to do? And so if I walked up to any of these people and asked them, why are you doing this? What do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, well, I want to get healthy. They want to lose weight. They want to be around for their kids. They want to feel better. And they're all true. They're all important reasons. But here's what most people won't admit. They care what they look like. You tell yourself you're training for health, for longevity, for function. But when you're in that hotel room mirror before a pool day, what are you actually thinking? You're thinking about whether you want to take your shirt off or not. You say it doesn't matter, but you never once felt good for taking your shirt off in public when you're not happy with how you look. And that's the truth that you won't say out loud. There's a version of you respect more. You know exactly who he is. But you won't give yourself permission to admit it. Because society says vanity is bad. I mentioned this earlier. Chasing aesthetics is shallow. You're supposed to want functional fitness or longevity or health span or some other virtuous, cover story. You justify boot camps, the variety, the community, the full body workout. But it's not getting you to where you actually want to go. So, they join these classes. They do burpees for no reason. They sweat their faces off. And they justify it to themselves. I'm getting fit. I feel good. I'm working hard. But then they go on vacation. They go to the pool. They look at themselves in the mirror. And they still hesitate to take their shirt off. You tell yourself, well, I'm healthy, I'm fit, that's what matters, right? But that's not what you actually wanted. They're doing the work, just not in service of the goal they won't admit. And this is why most successful men never get visible abs. It's not because they don't train hard. It's not because they're lazy or undisciplined. is because they won't admit the outcome they actually want. So their plan never matches it. If you had congruence in your fitness, here's what you do. You sit down and admit to yourself, yeah, I want to be jacked. I want to be strong. I want to look powerful. I want my body to represent who I am. I made that realization when I was 16 years old. When I went to the gym for the first time, my dad took me to the gym. I said that I wanted to be 100 kilograms and 7% body fat. I'm not, I'm somewhere along the line, I sort of like screwed up with building muscle, or not really screwed up. In a sense, I had too many injuries, too many imbalances for my body to be able to push myself and get myself to a stage where my body was comfortable. And sort of when I finally realized what was wrong and found the solution for it, it was only then I started to make progress. But it was sort of beyond the teen year, no, not the teen years, beyond the optimal years, so to speak, right? When I say optimal, like this is sort of like a threshold where your body is just grows and grows and grows, right? Like we all have a sort of I was called a genetic potential, but I was like to get to if I was training as hard as I'm training now earlier without the imbalances and the breaking down, I would have been able to get a lot further. But anyway, knowing or even knowing what I know now, so I looked at myself and said, I want to be strong. I want to be jacked. I want to look like the best version of myself. And I've been on that quest ever since, even though I've had a few sort of forks in the road. And I'm still not jacked enough. I'm wearing a tank top right now, and I'm on vacation, and I'm still not satisfied. But I'm congruent with it. I don't pretend. I don't care. I don't virtue signal about how health is all that matters, or I just want to feel good. I care about what my body looks like because it's a representation of me. It's on display to my wife, for my sons, for the world to see. And I want it to be the best representation that I can make it. That congruence, that alignment between what I want and what I want, what I admit I want, changes everything. It means I don't waste time doing things that don't align with the goal. I don't do burpees. I don't do jump ropes. I don't do circuits or 5Ks or sprint triathlons or cardio or whatever. I train to get stronger, right? I'm incongruent. My goals. I train in congruence with my goals. I eat to build muscle or cut fat, depending on the phase. I progress over time. It's simple, direct, congruent. And because of that congruence, because my goal matches my actions, matches my admissions, I make progress 100 times faster than most people. Most people are incongruent with what they want. They want to be jacked, but they're doing Orange Theory. They want visible abs, right? Breaks for abs, but they're training for a half marathon. Like that's going to give you abs. They want big arms, but they're doing functional fitness, whatever that is. Right? They're wasting years. They're wasting their time, man. They're spinning their wheels. But because they're unwilling to admit what they want, they're unwilling to admit they want something, they feel bad for wanting. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Society wants to make you feel bad for wanting something. Hey, we'll talk about needs versus wants again. And it's the same in business. You want the Ferrari, but you feel greedy. You want the penthouse, but it feels excessive. You want the freedom, but you're worried about what people will think. You tell yourself you're building for the right reasons, for your family, for security, for impact. And maybe that's partially true, right? But if there's a goal you won't admit to say out loud, or there's a goal that you won't say out loud, even if there's something you want, but you convince yourself that you shouldn't, you're in conflict. It's like, okay, you want to be in business. Why? Because you want freedom. What's freedom? You want to have money to do what you want. For me, I went to business because I wanted freedom. Freedom to me is doing what I want, when I want, with who I want, and waking up to without waking up to an alarm kind of thing, right? And so this is where sort of people this is where people really go wrong. You're afraid to admit that you want to be rich. Okay, so you sort of have a conversation over dinner. Yeah, we're doing it for impact, and I want to sort of help this charity mission and all that kind of stuff. And and maybe you do, and that's good on you. I mean, it's good to help other people, but it's also good to admit that you want something for the right reasons. Okay, so you know the number that issue you want to hit, but you tell people as a smaller one. You know the exit that you actually want, but you justify staying smaller. You know the lifestyle you actually want, but act like you're above it. And that's a conflict. That conflict is slowing you down. And I'm passionate about this topic because it's sad. It's genuinely sad watching men walk around with this internal conflict. This conflict that comes from programming, school, news, society, religion, parents who are doing their best but pass on their fears and limitations. And this programming makes people shameful for their goal. They feel bad for their ambition. They feel bad for wanting a six pack. They feel bad for wanting bigger arms. They feel bad for wanting to be successful enough to walk into a Lamborghini dealer and buy what they want, or walk into a BMW dealership in Park Lane, and like the sort of the flagship dealership in London, which I did when I bought the M3. Oh, I had the 6 Series as well, which I forgot to mention. I walked into a BMW dealership and said, like the Park Lane, the prestigious one in London, the head office sort of, and I said I wanted that car, because it felt good. It felt congruent, and society reinforces that constantly. You know what you want. The only thing costing you is pretending you don't. Stop doing things that don't align. Stop justifying activities that don't move you towards what you actually want. Be honest. Be direct. Be congruent. Because congruence is the only thing that matters. Everything else is just noise. Everything else is you managing perception or protecting your ego or avoiding judgment. The goal isn't more discipline. It's fewer lies. It's fewer lies. And the moment you stop negotiating for yourself, everything starts moving faster. I'll see you on the next episode.